Welcome to Get Your News On with Ron. Our guest is back, and our guest is Mel Tillekeratne. Did I get it, Mel? Did I say your last name right?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. All right. So Mel is an activist, and he is like the Beatles of LA activism. And I'm sure he's gonna not want me to say that because he's a very humble guy, but he is just doing amazing work. And when you see him, it makes you feel lazy. The amount of activism he does and the amount of help he has given the LA community, it is truly amazing. So I'm really excited to have him on the show today. And he is one of the moving forces behind the SheDoes movement, which is a movement to combat homelessness here in LA. And Mel, to start out, could you kind of unpack that movement for the viewers?
Yeah, so what the SheDoes movement is basically right now the county of LA has officially anywhere from over 30,000 women on our streets, and unofficially probably above 50,000 women. And what the SheDoes movement is one, to bring awareness to the fact that there are that many women on our streets, and second, to bring awareness to the fact that these women are continuously exposed to sex assault and rape. And what we've done in the last 5 months is we pressured the city of LA to actually start opening more shelters. And these shelters are called bridge housing because they're geared more not just towards sheltering people, but towards transitioning them back on their own feet or into housing. But what we've done is we've started this movement where they're actually on goal to set up around 7 new shelters specifically for women in the next 8 months.
Mm-hmm. So how did this all get started?
So I've been serving on Skid Row for 7 years. I was basically running an organization called Monday Night Mission. And we went to Skid Row 5 nights a week. And in the last 2 years, we saw this huge increase of people on the streets. But with this huge increase, what we saw was a disproportionate increase in women on the streets. And with that many women on the streets, we saw a huge increase in sex assault. One of the crazy statistics that a lot of people don't know is 90% of the women on Skid Row are either victims of domestic violence and or sex assault. 90%. And when we saw that, and when we saw the women's movement, the Me Too movement start to rise, we thought about how we could get some of that attention over to the women who are homeless and try to see how we could go about getting these women inside and protected. So that's how it started.
Now, you're still doing the Monday Night Mission in addition, correct? Or something similar to it, where you do go down to Skid Row on a regular basis?
So for the last 2 months, we've actually stopped going to Skid Row because we're focusing more on helping these bridge housing projects go through. And what we're doing is right now we're seeing an abundance of food on Skid Row. When everybody hears that there's a huge rise in homelessness, a lot of people are going down there and there's actually enough food. So there's really no need for us to be there. So what we're doing is we're setting up outreach around where the new shelters are going in. So one, the people who are in the areas where the new shelters are coming in know that there's going to be new opportunities. Secondly, we're also trying to create outreach and create a connect with the community so that we can get them to take care of the people who are going to move into these shelters.
A lot of people are kind of, you still don't hear homelessness being talked about by virtually any politician. And I'm sure there's exceptions out there, but you don't hear it talked about on a large scale. You hear it being talked about minimally on the local level. I mean, stuff like rent control is a dirty word to a lot of politicians locally here in Los Angeles. Meanwhile, it is on the rise more so than ever before. There are tent cities in every neighborhood in Los Angeles. It's not just Skid Row, it's everywhere. Why do you think that is? Well, why do you think people aren't confronting this crisis more head on?
To be honest with you, Ron, homelessness is something that has always been overlooked. It's something that people always find ways to ignore. People will come up with excuses. I mean, still to this day, we hear the excuse, oh, they choose to be homeless, even when we know that there's a perfect correlation between a lack of affordable housing and the numbers of people who are becoming homeless. And also, it's sad because most politicians know that, homeless people are not the people who go out and vote. So they tend to ignore that fact. And now there's more focus given on affordable housing, because affordable housing is something that's really, really getting unaffordable and people are getting angry. So they're looking more to address than that to, address the symptom of not having affordable housing, which is homelessness.
Yeah, and 44%, someone actually pointed it out in the chat too, 44% of homeless people have jobs. So,
That is,
it's not like, oh, they choose this. They don't want, like, no, we have a disease going on where there is not affordable housing available, where, we are seeing a gap between the rich and the poor that is remnant of ancient Egypt. And as a result, we have so much homelessness. So what would you suggest? I mean, obviously people can get involved with SheDoes, and we're going to plug all those links to everybody. But what are some other things that people can do just kind of right in their backyard?
I think people need to start going back to their neighborhood councils, because a lot of people don't understand there's a lot of power within these neighborhood councils, because they're the ones who actually see all the new developments going, and they're the ones who can say yes or no to new developments. So if they see a development going in and there's not 20% of affordable housing in that development, and they're building it on top of a facility that already has affordable housing, we need the neighborhood council to say no. So one of the biggest things people can do is go to their neighborhood councils. There's actually a lot of money in neighborhood councils, and neighborhood councils are the first thing that city councils listen to. So we need people to getting involved in the grassroots level. There's a lot of power at those neighborhood councils. And if people, like for us, for these shelters to go in, one of the biggest barriers is the NIMBY saying not in my backyard. But if there were more people who were supportive towards housing and shelters in neighborhood councils, it would make it much more easier for us to pass through bridge housing, pass through supportive housing, and make sure that our rent-controlled buildings are not getting destroyed.
So Pryby points out gentrification is the neoliberal version of redistricting. That's clever. I like that, and thank you very much for the super chat contribution. Mel, I want to ask you about you for a little bit. What got you involved with all this? What made you decide to become an activist? Let's get a little bit of your backstory to know the man behind the avatar on Google Hangout.
Well, I apologize for the camera not working.
Oh, no worries, man. It's all good. We can hear you loud and clear, so that's what's most important.
I was born and raised in Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka is a country that the US considers poor. But we don't see homelessness. I mean, maybe one or two people, but it is nothing compared to what it is here. And while I was in LA, I always lived on the west side. And when you live on the west side, like, the Mid-Wilshire area, you're always kind of hidden from everything. So one day after I started working in downtown, I drove through downtown at night, and I drove through Skid Row by mistake. And I literally was in so much shock. I had to ask people if they were homeless, because I mean, I still can't fathom how the 20th biggest economy, LA County, has the second worst homeless problem in the US.
Mm-hmm. But were people nice to you when you approached them? Like what was that? Describe that event. You're just a guy from a different country, and how did you wind up in LA?
It was, well, I came here for school, ended up staying.
Okay.
But it was 2 a.m. I was coming home after a party, and I was just in shock. And to this day, I tell people, I literally asked people if they were homeless, because I couldn't like really fathom it. Not a lot of people were up. They were pretty nice. I went into a McDonald's that was a couple of miles away, brought 10 sandwiches, and then all of a sudden, like, someone screamed McDonald's, and next thing you know, 50, 60 people mobbed me. Like, everybody's like, hey, we need sandwiches. So that was like a little bit nerve-wracking, to be honest. One, being in shock. Second, being surrounded by people who were like super hungry. But that also opened my eyes, because after the sandwiches ran out and everybody's just waiting around, one of the older guys was like, "What about the rest of them?" And that really struck me.
Right. I mean, yeah, you can only buy so many. I mean, especially if you were a college student at the time. So yeah, that's got to be really heavy. I mean, one of the things that I plan on doing shortly, you know, there's a large homeless community where I live in Pasadena, and a lot of them stay on this one church right on Colorado Boulevard. That's where there's a large tent community right there in the evenings, and I'll walk past it on my way to my gym, or just if I'm ever in the area. And, you know, one of the things I plan on doing, especially as it's, you know, I mean, it's summer right now, but you know how California, we always get cold at night, and eventually it's going to get colder at night. I have a bunch of winter clothes at my parents' house because my family's from Pennsylvania. And there's a bunch of winter clothes from when I was a kid that I know just kind of collects dust that nobody uses anymore. So either I'm going to ask them to ship it to me, or when I go home to visit for the Thanksgiving holiday, I'm going to just bring it back with me and just kind of get it in a big box and just kind of set it in the middle of there one of these days, just for people to get some warm clothes if they need it. I mean, it's something very small, but you know, it's at least something I thought that I should do that. So take this opportunity to kind of just plug all of you know, the SheDoes movement. Where can people go to learn more? What can people do to get directly involved with those movements?
So thank you. So quick thing, I actually run what's called the Shower of Hope, and we're in South Pasadena on Wednesdays. So that's the showerofhope.org. If people want to help, we have a couple of mobile trailers. We're getting a laundry truck, and we offer free showers. As far as the SheDoes movement, SheDoesMovement.org. What we want to do is we want to bring awareness as well as humanize the people on our streets. We want to put a face to the people. It's not a homeless person. It's a working mom. It's a working dad. It's a kid going to college who's paying for his textbooks, but he can't afford to pay the rent, and he's living out of his car. So we want to bring these stories out, and we want people to come up with us to the marches we do and the events we do. We go to City Hall. We try to pass you know, anything that involves shelters, we go in force and we try to pass it, and we show support. So if anybody wants to get involved, SheDoesMovement.org. You can find us on Facebook under SheDoes, and then just use the hashtag SheDoes, and you'll find us. And we need people, even if it's fighting the NIMBYs in Koreatown or Venice, we need people to turn up, and we need people to say yes to housing and bridge housing in their backyard.
Mel, thanks so much for doing this. So that's SheDoesMovement.org for anybody that wants to learn more. And I'm talking today with Mel Tillekeratne. He is an activist who is doing a lot of amazing things that he just summarized for us today.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. That was a clip from Get Your News On with Ron, the world's first viewer-curated streaming news show. What does that mean? That means I log on to a stream and people tweet me articles over on Twitter at Ron Placone, or they use our Reddit subsection, which is just Get Your News On with Ron over on Reddit. And that's how we build the show. I'm seeing all these articles for the first time. We are literally getting our news on together. Follow me on Twitter at Ron Placone so you can participate. And this show streams live every Tuesday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So please do tune in. If you want to support this show, you can do so over on patreon.com/Ron Placone, where for as low as $1 a month, you get access to exclusive podcasts every week, exclusive videos, free tickets to shows when I'm performing in your town, and more for as low as $1 a month. Please do consider it. Thank you so much for your support. This has been Get Your News On with Ron.